Hey everybody. Had an interesting day today. I had a few things put into perspective for me today. I attended a funeral today. Um, was a friend of my grandmother's that I had sat and talked to myself. I knew her. Was always kind to me. So I wanted to go pay my respects. But one of the things that we bonded over was the people that we both mutually knew because they grew up in the area where my ex came from. So we knew some of the same people. So going to this funeral, I was kind of dreading. I knew I wasn't going to run into my ex, but I was worried I would run into people associated. Fortunately, that didn't happen. So I lucked out there. Because I don't want to get pulled into anything. I'm done with that stuff. But it was a very lovely service. They absolutely did justice on that one. So I was grateful to be included in that. You know. And then afterwards, we stopped at the Amish market to get a little something to eat and for them to do some browsing. And the only thing I picked up was from the rack of free literature, and it's old. It's dated from March, April, and May of 2024. But I picked this up. The reason I picked this up is because I'm getting antsy. Right? I have my book done. It's written. It's finished. The only thing I am waiting for is one of my fact checkers to get back to me. I sent out 2 fact checkers. One already said they didn't see any issue with anything. But I don't want to get the cart ahead of the horse. I want to make sure it's right. So I'm waiting for the other one to before I release things publicly. But again, I don't want to lose my momentum. Right? I know I got classes coming up starting in January. I'm really looking forward to that opportunity. I definitely feel called to it. But in the meantime, I'm trying to fill the space, and I was thinking, okay, well, it took me forever to get that one book written, and now that I have it done, I don't want to stop there. Because I even said in the intro to this book that I plan on making it a series. And I think the next one's going to be on the one that I had promised that I hadn't done yet because I got sucked into that project again. Is on Elijah because I have quite a bit of material to go, and he's the first 3 chapters of this. So, so I can take that a little further. So yeah, I'm going to start collecting notes to get ready for that. But I'm not going to dive in head first because I don't want it to be a distraction from classes that I'll have to be paying attention to. I do have a couple things with that I need to attend to. I need to ask some questions, solve a couple issues with. But I honestly don't foresee it being too big of an issue. And again, talking about that perspective being in the area I was in, my big complaint with my ex was once my health faded, I got zero support. Hey, you should pursue this, or it was always, hey, you got to get back to manual labor. Like, no, I'm having heart issues. There's other things to do than that. But again, I didn't get any of that. But the one thing, I will say, the one thing they didn't speak ill of was my writing. But I cannot say they supported it, because every time I tried to do it, they were never in my corner about it. That's why this started years ago and never got finished, because every time I tried to work on it, again, distractions from being in that household. And it was a stark reminder, like, you can't change the people around you, but you can change the people around you. And that was what finally happened. Like, I was tired of feeling stunted. I was tired of being put down. I was tired of, again, that lack of support. And it's so funny, because she got so upset, and like, it really kind of hit home to me today. I mean, I know I mentioned it before, but like, it really hit home. Like, she said she had been unhappy and things for the last 2 years. Well, that's when everything shifted, right? That's when she had to start doing the things that I had been willing to do to keep this relationship going. So the minute that was the case was when she was unhappy. And that spoke volumes to me. I have zero doubt in my mind that she is absolutely, what I saw at the end. She is a narcissist. She never gave a care. Never will. Because the more I have memories like this, because I haven't thought very hard about it in a while. I mean, I know I still talk about, things I won't accept anymore in life all the time, but I haven't really thought specifically about that situation in a while. And things of today brought it out. But it's like, now I feel the urge and the capability to churn those out. I'm really getting antsy. I wanted to start recording, because the book that I wrote, I'm also going to turn into a video series on here. I wanted to start recording those to just have them on the back burner, so when I get the green light, thumbs up, that I can move forward, I can just start dropping them. But again, I don't have a whole lot of storage space, so I can't do that. I have to wait, until I'm ready. And I don't want to record them ahead of time, because what if, my person comes back and says, hey, you got to change a couple things. I don't think that'll happen. But again, when you don't think it'll happen is when it happens. So I gotta hold myself back. Again, I'm trying to be more of the example that was set. More like how I'm supposed to be, and I'm starting to lose my patience, because again, I'm feeling very eager to keep going. And I feel that, and I recognize it now as that calling, that you're letting yourself get anxious over it. Be anxious for nothing. And it's just amazing. The big thing about looking back at my history today is, it's not good to live in your past, but it is okay to look back every once in a while just to see how far you've come. I'm sitting here looking at it, like the last 6 months alone, because all the big blow up happened in June. So in 6 months, how much has my life changed? And it has changed drastically, and all for the better. I quit hanging around people that were afraid of me. People who didn't like my authenticity. People who tried to make me shrink. That wasn't just my relationship. That was my whole friend circle at the time. And I got rid of all of that in one fell swoop. I told everybody, I'm done with everybody. I blocked who I had to block. I tuned out who I had to tune out. I was done with it. And I still say, it was rough at first. It was. It felt like a loss. But then the more time went, the more it's like, no, that's what I needed to do. I mean, it wasn't. I was upset about it, but I didn't do it out of anger. I did it out of self-respect and self-preservation. And again, now that I've had 6 months to work on it and work on myself, I'm like, 10 out of 10, highly recommend. I wish everybody would do it. Because it has definitely shaped me into what I knew I could be and others didn't want me to be. I am made to be heard. And all those people that I dropped never wanted that. Never wanted that for me. And you can call it, a bunch of hoopla and thinking, but that's how I know a lot of them were sent by the enemy as a distraction. Because none of them brought me closer in my relationship to God, and none of them was pushing, me to follow my calling, to step into it. I had to break free of everything. And all that energy that I was wasting pouring into these people, I wasn't pouring it into them anymore. So I said, hey, I'm going to fill my own cup. And all that, speaking life that I used to give to them, I started doing here to myself. Not selfishly, but to get myself put back together so I could come out and do things the right way. I could get myself back on track. And that's happened. That's where I'm at right now. And it's just amazing to, look back and think on it. I know that I made the right decision. At the time, I questioned it, but I don't anymore. Sorry, I'm still ruminating on some of the history there. Like, again, how many people were truly genuinely afraid of me? Like, I can see it now. And again, that's not ego. That's not even saying they're evil. It's because it's not. It's the fact that people in this world are trained to be in competition with one another. And I was viewed as that much of a threat. That actually makes me feel good about myself, honestly. Like literally the one friend, every time we went to go out, everything was a competition. Had to be the best at whatever it was. And when it was your turn to take your shot, he was right there talking shit the whole time. Stay away from those people. They might mean well, they're trying to be the life of the party, but again, it shows that we're supposed to be boosting each other, helping each other, not tearing each other down. This is not how this is supposed to work. Right? The other friend that I, again, stood up for every time, and again, there's karma in effect. One of the things that did upset my ex was this friend that I had from the past. Never dated, by the way. Never anything between us. We were just friends. We had a lot of misadventures, back in high school days. And I always, me being me, gave it the benefit of the doubt. And a couple times my ex commented, like, I'm a little uncomfortable with that friendship. And I said, well, I agree. To to a degree of what you're saying. I can see what you're saying. But I see them as a good friend. So I made a compromise there. And again, now hindsight, my ex don't do compromise. If it's not her way, then I get punished for it. And again, the longer we were apart, the more I could look back and see that. But regardless, they canceled each other out because the minute, my ex's big complaint about that friend was about their flirty nature. And I'm like, well, one, you ain't got to worry about it with me because I'm in it. I wanted the commitment. I wanted the loyalty. You know what I mean? That's what I was putting into it, and that's what I wanted out of it. But that apparently was too much to ask of that person. So, but again, the minute that, that broke, that friend, all of a sudden, their tune changed. Like the things that they thought were joking and cute before were now off limits. And that made me see the truth about them. Like again, they needed that validation. But the minute something became real, something, had the potential to be authentic, they had to close themselves off to it. Like, why do people insist on playing these? You play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. Again, I might not be perfect, but I am who I say I am. And I don't know why other people find that so hard to do. I mean, let's face it, I look back at, the last several years of my life, hell, almost all my life, or at least as much as I can remember, and I've been told, what to do, how to conform. Be like us. And I was ostracized and put down on the things that I refused. I was like, no, that don't make no sense to me. I'm not doing that. It's just funny, Again, hindsight is 20/20. And that's definitely true in this case. I can definitely see a lot better looking back. A lot of things are clicking into place, making more sense. And again, that the whole point of all that is to say, like, it really made me think and come together and realize today. Again, that's why I'm feeling so antsy, because all that time that I felt like I wasted, putting my focus in the wrong places. And again, accountability is for one, I tolerated what I thought I deserved. So I put up with it to let it get to that point. And secondly, I got worldly. That's why me and my ex are incompatible. She is definitely of the world, but I don't want to be anywhere in it. I don't. I've always been, the outsider. I don't want to conform to what everybody else is doing. I want to do the right thing. I want to think for myself. I mean, why don't people want to use their God-given, like literal God-given right of free will? Why do so many people let others tell them who to be or how to act? And don't get me wrong, I agree. Within society, there's, laws to follow. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, your character. Just because everybody else is doing it doesn't make it right. But we live in a society where everybody normalizes being a douchebag. There's no other way to put it. I know that's a little rough. Trust me, I could have said it worse. I wanted to. And everybody thinks that's going to get them ahead in some way. And it makes absolute zero sense to me. But I'm thankful for that it doesn't make sense to me. You know, I'm learning to let go of a lot of things. Like, you know, one of my favorite sayings is make it make sense. But some things I don't need to figure out. I don't. Because I'm done giving benefit of the doubt. You know, I used to want to do that because I didn't want to lose people, but in the process, I lost myself. You know, I was squandering what I was supposed to be doing. You know, God gave me these gifts, and I wasn't using them. I was putting everything on a back burner to, again, please people. Like, no, that's not how this works. I do my purpose, and I will align with the things that are meant for me. But I have to do my part first. You know, I at least have to be in it. And that is, again, proving evident, because as soon as I dropped all those people that I was just sitting here, you know, reminiscing about and complaining about, you know, literally the very next week, I marched my butt straight up to that church. And I've been doing it since. You know, that's where I belong. And those are the people that, you know, all that support that I've been asking for. And I wasn't asking, again, for the kind of support, you know, people misconstrue. I just needed people to encourage me, you know, for something. And when you're fighting depression, that's the one thing, you know, you need some encouragement. That's what'll help bring you out of it. And I wasn't getting that. But then I went up to the church, and now I'm surrounded by it. You know, that has far exceeded any expectations I had. I mean, look back 6 months ago to me walking in there as a stranger, like they didn't know me from Adam. You know, a couple of them had an idea of who I was, you know, because we're in a small community, but, you know, and then here comes this guy out of nowhere that brings something of value, you know, to the community, to the group. And they see it and acknowledge it instead of trying to shrink it in me. And look at that has changed in my life. Look what that has opened up for me. Just that difference alone. You know, it sounds like something small, but it's not. Don't tie yourself to people that don't want to see you built up. Period. You know, that was the game my ex played. Was she wanted to be materialistic, wanted things of the world, but didn't want to put in the effort to help me become that, to provide that. Because again, they were afraid of my potential, of what I could become, because they were the type that wanted control. You know, it was never about love, it was about control. And, you know, the more I understand about narcissism, the more it helps me to really let go. You know, because that had nothing to do with me. That was not my failing. I mean, don't get me wrong, accountability, that is not to say I didn't do anything wrong, because I did. Again, a great example was that friendship that I gave the benefit of the doubt to, and turned out that was one thing they were actually right about. Probably for the wrong reasons, but she was right about it. Yeah. I have another friend, you know, online here. He was recovering. Like, I hadn't heard from them in a while, and just the other day I heard why, because they had an incident, and they're in recovery from it. You know, but in their incident, like they were going through the kind of the same awakening I was. You know, they had that come to God moment, come to Jesus. So we've been exchanging, you know, a lot of ideas back and forth. And again, it's about keeping the right company. It's about talking to the right people for the right reasons. It's about taking the blinders off, right? And if somebody waves a red flag right in your face, don't ignore it. I mean, I knew back from the first heart attack, I knew something wasn't right in that relationship. And again, I ignored the red flags. I gave chance after chance after chance. And the issue never changed, even though I said it clearly multiple times. Matter of fact, not only did it not change for the better, it actually escalated and got worse. And I guess, you know, they didn't believe that I had the spine to be like, hey, I'm serious. When I say this is I am not going to put up with this again, I mean it. And I could tell because when they got back from their little girls' trip, and I wasn't waiting on them, and I said, no, thank you, I'm done. All right, that's not silent treatment for punishment. That's because you showed me who you are, and you don't want the same thing out of this that I do. I'm here to build something. You know. And it irks me that I let them use me as long as they did. You know, when I could have used that time to be building with somebody else. But something else that, you know, I've realized is it's okay because, again, like I say, it's all about character development. If I didn't have that experience, I wouldn't be who I am now. I wouldn't have the insights to share that I do now. You know, I wish I had looked it up before I started recording here, but there's a Bible verse that, you know, don't complain about your struggles because, you know, they produce perseverance, which produces patience, which it's a whole list, you know, and basically the opposite of the Yoda mantra about, you know, jealousy leading to the dark side. It's the exact inverse of that. But yeah, it's true. You know, you start hanging around the right crowd. And again, pretty much immediately, my new friends started to, you know, not only were they accepting and encouraging, but they also, you know, when old bad habits presented themselves, they more than once pulled me aside and said, hey, you want to fix that. That's, your actions aren't matching your words. You know, they called me out on that. And I'm thankful that they did because it helped me break some of that programming that I had been through over the last few years. Because again, I was almost completely gone. I had completely abandoned myself. I was shaping into what everybody else wanted. And I was miserable. Because again, they didn't want it for any good intentions. It's different if the intentions are, because again, my new friends, like, hey, you know, we see your potential. You're good. Get better. You know, don't backslide. You know, I'm really grateful for that. You know, God put me in the right place, right time. You know, and we're not meant to understand or figure that out. His ways are not our ways. His ways are better than our ways. And that's the thing. You know, not many people are willing to, you know, everybody hates that word obey or submit. But again, you put the word trust in anywhere and the context is still the same. Just trust. That's it. That's all God has ever asked of us is to trust Him. And when you give up the ego and you actually do that, it changes your world. It really does. I am living testimony to that. But again, I had to be broken down, like I was talking about last night, you know, from that verse in Jeremiah. You got to be broken down to be reshaped. I had to hit that rock bottom. I had to get that thorn in the flesh, so to speak. Because when I am weak, I am strong. You got to be humbled. You got to be real humble. And you know, people see that as weakness. They don't want that. You know? And I get it, but that's how we're programmed to think. Because that's not the reality. The reality is again, the more I strive, and again, I'm far from perfect. I'm not saying I am. My transformation is ongoing. There's still things I need to change in myself, and I'm still working on that. You know? But the more I try to follow, you know, what I'm supposed to, and I take it strictly biblically, right? I don't listen to religious dogma. It has to be biblical. You know, and again, I've learned one of the ways to check for false doctrine. If somebody is telling you the Bible says something, tell them, okay, give me 3 places where it says that. If they can only give you one, that's not because that's what the Bible says. That's because that's what they want it to say. And again, that's not foolproof, but it gives you a lot better chance of discerning, you know, lies from the truth. And that's the enemy's favorite tactic, is lies. You got to be willing and able to go in and see the truth for yourself. And that's what this is all about. This is opening that door. This is showing people how to open those eyes to see it. But you got to be willing to abandon some of that old programming first. You got to let go of that ego. That's why everybody is so miserable, because they're so stuck on ego. It's going to be my way, and I want this, and me, and now, and no. Good things come to those who are patient. The harder you work for something, the more it means to you once you obtain it. You know, it's never been about laziness. I understand why some people mistake that concept with me. You know, a lot of people don't see how I strategize. That's how I'm, and again, I'm not sitting here talking myself up. It's not ego, it's acceptance. It's I'm coming to terms with this. Just how I know I've learned that people don't have the same kind of heart I do. That's one of the things that intimidates people, is I am very strategic, but in a different way, not in a malevolent way, not necessarily in a benevolent way either. But you know, again, I try to nudge people towards their potential, not shape them to what I want them to be. If that, you know, again, that's one of those epiphanies I've had today that I realized. You know, and that's the difference. That's what, you know, that circle was using me for, to use my gifts to build them up, but they had to kick me while I was down. You know? Keep me down there. Didn't work. Because I have a job to do. You know, and that verse is absolutely true. God will always show you the exit. You just got to be willing to look for it. And that was my exit. Get away from that group. Get away from people like that. You know, start listening again for that still small voice. Do what you know is right. Try and understand better. Study the word more. All very simple stuff. But all of it has been life-changing and all for the better. You know, if you told me 6 months ago I'd be where I am now, I wouldn't have believed it. If you told me a year ago I'd be where I am now, I really wouldn't have believed it. Here I am. I'm given these gifts for a reason. And I want to use them to leave this world better than I found it, which is very tricky to do, but we have fallen so far. But I haven't given up hope, you know? There are still people out there with good in them. Granted, they're getting fewer and further between, but they are out there. And it's never too late to change and become one of those people. That's my testimony. That's the message I'm out here to share. I used to be one of those people. I chose to change. And that's the only way it happens. You have to choose it. You have to want it. Then you have to actually put in the work. There's no shortcut. You know? You know, I've said before, people want what I have, but they don't want it from me. And they don't want to have to do the work that I did to get it. You know, while everybody else is out there grinding, looking for money, there's more important things in life than that. Can't serve two masters, and I picked the better of the two. Definitely. Because it's been proven, you know, look at me. I haven't worked since that first heart attack, but I'm still sustained. How's that happen? You know, I have a great family. And even more than that, and trust me, that is a big thing, but even more than that, I'm doing what I know is right. I'm doing what I know I'm called to do. And is my life going to be fancy and extravagant? No. But I'm going to enjoy it. When it gets to the end, I'm going to be proud of myself. I'm not going to be ashamed, you know, at judgment. I'm going to be like, yeah, I started rough, but, you know, I learned the lessons. I changed. I didn't let the world harden me. I will never let this world harden me. You know, I'm very stubborn about that. It's not who I ever want to be again. You know, I tried it for a while. It left a bad taste in my mouth. It didn't fit me right. I'll never go back to that. If it doesn't evolve me, it doesn't involve me, you know? We can always do and be better. You just have to want it. And you have to realize that it's possible. You know, now it's faster for me. But when I first started this healing or growth journey or whatever you want to call it, this awakening, all of them apply, but none of them are quite right. You know? I'm just becoming what I was always meant to be. You know, if I had followed the right path, you know, if I had, in my younger years, instead of messing around and if I had chased purpose instead of pleasure, you know, things would have been different. But again, you know, it's never too late to course correct. And that's my message to the world, you know, because a lot of people turn away because they think, oh, I'm too far in. You know, the ones that do realize, like, hey, you know, I'm not really happy living this way, but I can't go the other way because I won't be accepted. Yeah, you will. Because that's the point. Again, the whole message of the Bible is not about what did you do. It's what are you willing to do. That's it in a nutshell. Look at how many tests, and that's the point. Are you willing to trust? Are you willing to do what I say? And I finally answered that with yes. Again, I'm not perfect at it. I'm still human. I'm flawed. But I try harder and harder every day, you know, to try and get it right. You know, I love this transformation. And it's so funny because the other day when we took a ride, you know, me and some of the other church people to go talk about the PA system, like, and at the Bible study, you know, before that, you know, there's been several little comments that I'm not letting go to my ego, but I am letting them wake me up. Like, people are talk about, you know, my diligence when it comes to studying the Word. And that's because, you know, I'm hungry for it. You know, I've seen it work in my life. You know, I can point out ways that it's applied. And I want more. Again, not out of greed, but because the more I follow it, the more fulfilled I am. But notice there's a difference. You know, it's not always happy. You have to appreciate the times of struggle because they shape you. They show you your real strength, right? But you had to be, again, humble and willing to realize that it's not your own strength, right? I like acronyms, and I say the acronym for HOPE is his own personal endurance, right? That eternal, like, I know this is going to end for good, so I can follow it to the end. We know that's God's plan. It says it right in the Bible, like in more than one, again, in multiple places. You know, I know the plans I have for you. You know, trust it. And do what you're supposed to do. You know, everybody thinks that, it's ironic, we've been so brainwashed. We think that by listening to that we'll be conforming. But that's the thing. We were made in God's image. It is our diversity that God loves. Think about it. He is the great creator, right? He loves that creativity that he put in us. We are supposed to be different. That is our gift. That's why we have free will. But you have to wield that correctly. You know, certain things are detrimental to us. And people just don't wrap their heads around that, you know. And again, I'm not talking smack because I am 45 years old and I'm just figuring this out. Again, I'm hard-headed, you know. But yeah, that's the secret, you know. Get in your word. Study it. Apply it. You know? But make sure you're understanding it right. Don't let somebody, reshape it on you and turn it into something it's not. That's why I'm really antsy to release this book, because, again, it teaches people the skills that I've learned to be careful about that stuff. But again, I want, somebody more experienced, more knowledgeable, an elder, to check my work before I share it with everybody else. Because I don't want the message to be about me. It's not my message. It's what I have been shaped to be able to share, to receive and share. That's why I've had the experiences that I have. Part of it is accountability. It's because of the choices I made. But it was also because I needed to have those experiences. I needed to have all those losses, because they are what shaped me into what I am now. And I wouldn't trade that for nothing. I am very happy with who I am right now. Probably the happiest I've ever been with myself is right now. And that took a lot of work to get there. And a lot of humbling myself to get there. And if you think that's a contradiction, then, again, not insultingly, but that means you're still not ready for those steps then yet. But if you really want your life to change, again, I tell people all the time, don't mistake it. This isn't just, a straight rule book. It is the greatest self-help guide, technically, that you'll ever get your hands on. No matter how many doctorates or experts out there slap something together, nothing will ever top that. Don't get me wrong, supplements are helpful. I used these two to help shape me into what I am now. Both are by Tim LaHaye. This one has Bob Phillips on it too. This one is Anger is a Choice, right? Because that's something I used to struggle with, is anger. And this one is by Tim LaHaye by himself, and it's Why You Act the Way You Do, right? And that's what actually started me down my path of understanding personality traits. This really helped with that. This started me down that path. And again, it all goes together. That's my gift. And that is absolutely, for a long time I thought it was a curse, but it's not. It is a gift. My pattern recognition, I can put pieces together that most people can't. Again, not ego. That is because that's not for me. That doesn't make me better than anybody. That makes me able to help others. How's the saying go? God makes you wait, do what waiters do, and serve. I lived selfishly for so long, and I was miserable because of it. But the minute I quit making it about me, and I buckled up, and I let go of the fear, and I said, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to, start talking the way I should be talking. I'm going to start sharing the things that I should be sharing. And everything has changed. Everything's improved. And that's how I know, proof is in the pudding. And it is definitely sweet. But anyway, I've drawn this out like way longer than it should have been. Yeah, I always say I'm going to try and make these 15 minutes, and here we are at almost, we're at 15 minutes and going. So, again, I need to learn to curb that, because if I'm going to do this right, that's what I'm going to the in January when I go to the lay classes. I need to learn to be more concise. But again, that's why I've already broke down the schedule of this, right? I know I showed it the other night. This is the video schedule. And this is how I broke it down to try and keep them shorter so they're more likely to be viewed, because I know the attention span of the world right now. The shorter, the better. There won't be 3-minute videos, but they should be able to be kept into 15 minutes and less. So we'll see. Once my last couple people I'm waiting on for reviews come back to me. Because again, I'm not supposed to be headstrong. It's not my way. Right? And I'm not trying to conform to the world either, because that ain't the way to go. But I'm using my discernment, which I sharpen by getting into the Word. Iron sharpens iron. Get around people that'll challenge you. But in a healthy way. Challenge you to grow. Not challenge you to be in competition. That's the only person I'm competing with, is who I was yesterday. And let me tell you, I'm doing pretty good with that. I know I'm winning that, event. And I can't let myself get distracted anymore. Anywho, this is really long, but I think it was a good talk. Hopefully, at least a couple people take the time to, because that is a bulk of my testimony. Like, that's really what I have to tell the world is, hey, it's never too late. Again, it's not about what you've done. It's about what you are willing to do. If you are open to correct things. That's the most important thing. That's what repentance is all about. And you can't do repentance without accountability. That is my thing. That's why I'm always pushing it. Because that is the key to unlocking the best version of what you can be. Again, we're humans. We're flawed. We won't be perfect, but I still want to try. I want to get as close as I can. And this is the way I've found that works to do that. All right, so as usual, take care of yourselves. Try and help take care of each other where you can. I'll see you in the next one.